All right, moving on to lesson number 8, math and object-oriented programming. Okay, so you can see here, test 2 was there. I understand we don't have anybody who's completely at that point right now, but the tests can be done at any point, so you can leave them for a little bit if you want to. Assignment 8B is the last spot that you should be getting finished up so that you can move on to these ones. Lesson 8 we're going to go through object-oriented programming and just the math. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because the math in this is not a lot different from Python or anywhere else. So I don't have a ton of examples of this. We can go through these expressions and use them the same way we'd use them as anything else. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulus. They're all the same. Okay, and then we can have our variables named average equals total divided by 5. Okay, sum equals 1 plus 2, whatever operation we want to occur. Okay, division's the same thing. Remember the idea behind if you're using integers, the answer is going to be in integers. If you use even one double, the answer will come out as a double. That's the same thing as always. Modulus, remember modulus returns, there's a division occurring, but it returns the leftover. Okay, so modulus 3 modulus 2 is going to come out as 2 because there's 2 left over. Okay, so it fits in there once, and then there's 1 left over. The second one's here. Okay, 2 modulus 3 returns 2 because no part of this whole number fits into this whole number. Therefore, we have the whole 2 left over. Okay, that's modulus, the same as we used it in Python. The precedence on the way Java takes a formula and uses it is here. You can copy and paste this so that you can use it in a quiz if you want to. And here's just some breakdown. So what's the output for num? In this case, num is 23 plus 17, so that's 40. 40 divided by 2, because that's the next step in the precedence, is 20. 20 plus 7 is 27. Okay, so the value of num is 27. Now we times it by 2. Okay, 27 times 2 is 54. We end up with 54. From there, we're going to divide by 5. 54 divided by 5 comes out as 10, because remember we're using integers here. So even though it comes out as, I don't know, 10.9 or whatever it is, it only returns the whole number. So it returns 10, because that's how many times it fits in there evenly. So now the value of num is 10. Num plus 4 divided by 2 minus 8. We're going to do the division first. So we go 4 divided by 2 is 2. Num is 10, so we have 10 plus 2 minus 8. So that's 12 minus 8. That leaves us with 4. That should be the next one, okay? Num is 4, so we have 4 plus 5 is 9. 9 divided by 2 is 4, and then it drops the percentage, so we end up with 4 plus 7, which is 11. Okay, so the last value of num is 11. I hope that's the same as any other math you've ever done. That's the way it works in Java. Okay, I have the explanation for all of that, but I just went through it, so I'm not going to spend any more time on there. We can have some shortcuts in there. So num equals 11, and then we say num plus plus. The value of num to start with was 11, and now once we get to this line of code, we say plus plus. That's the same as saying num plus 1. So num plus plus would be 12, and then num minus minus would be back to 11. It's the same as saying num minus 1. Okay, so you can use that shortcut in your programming when you're using it. Casting is when you change the data type of a variable to help work together to make them compatible with each other. Just remember that, if you want to see the decimal places, you're going to have to cast a variable as a double in order to get that. If you want to drop the decimal places, you cast it as an integer, and then it drops it for you. Okay, and that's all that example. All the examples through here deal with that. But we've done that before. Okay, so this stuff is new. Remember, just pretend the system is here. There is a way to make all your print statements you only have to type out.printf, but I would rather just print it all out for now until you get more comfortable with it. the method print function is used to format your output. It's most often used to set the number of decimal places that are displaying. So this long number is not necessarily what human beings want to see. We typically want to see, 1 or 2 decimal places. And in order to do that, we can use this printf, okay? And we use modulus decimal 2f. That is going to give us a decimal place of 2. These are the other functions that you can throw in this section. This will return a decimal value. This returns your decimal value, your integer value, character value, string value. You can also left align and such here, which I'm going to show you in a second. So when we use this function, we go modulus 9.2f. This is the column size. This is the number of decimal places. And this is the type of data we're expecting. So we put the comma after our quotations, and then we put the number in we want here. We can also put a variable in here, and that's going to return for us the value that we want. So I've got some examples down here. Actually, I'm going to just go ahead. Okay, I have these examples in a program right now. I switched my Eclipse to dark mode. I can show you if you want to do that. I don't know if I'm sold on it yet, but I'm going to mess with it and see what happens. Okay, so in this example right here, we have double dec and int num, and those are the values of those two. So then when we print it out, we're using that one the first example that we had in here. So this one is going to return that number. It's going to return that number to us with 2 decimal places. Okay, modulus 0.2f. It's going to return 2 decimal places on the dec number because right now it's got 4. So when I run this, okay, it just gives me the 5.34 decimal places. The second one, this one is going to give us the decimal of num. Num is a integer, so we're not going to have any decimal places, but now we've thrown this 6 in here ahead of the declaration of the type of data, okay? And that 6 is going to move the placement of that output 6 spots to the right. Okay, so when we print that, oh no, this one just prints out that one. Sorry, I was on the wrong one. This one just prints it out the decimal spot, and there's no decimals in that one, so we don't need to worry about it. This was the one I was trying to show you. Okay, this one pulls it over 6 spots to there. Okay, and you can change that number to move it over further. Okay, and further and further and further wherever you want to. The next one, -6, takes us back to our original spot. Okay, and then the last one, if we put a 0 in there ahead of where we want the indent to come, it'll fill each of those place values with zeros. Okay, 0, 0, 0, and away we go. Okay, that is the print function example. This second one's just another example of the same stuff in a different format, or basically with just different numbers. Okay, this is the big one from this lesson. Instance variables are something that you can use, where you can use variables that are going to be used multiple times through a program. Okay, so the example here is we have these variables that we want to use in multiple methods throughout our program. So we bring those in right below the class, and we say private int 1, comma 2. We can put multiples on one line, finish it all off with a semicolon. We add another one below called int answer. And now we can use these variables throughout our entire class. We can also use them passing parameters to another class too, which I'm going to show you in a second. So I establish a method here called public void add, and then I say answer equals 1 plus 2. So whatever value we end up putting into 1 and 2, they're going to add those together to get answer. Okay? Private, when we throw private in front of these, it just means that it's going to be able to be used by anything in that class that has access to that class. Modifier methods. This is where we use a method to assign a value to those instance variables. Okay, and just to not be confusing, I'm going to do that. I created 2 classes beforehand. I'm sure you know how to do that, and I'm just going to set that up, and I'm going to try to go as quick as I can. So I'm going to create these variables 1, 2, and then I'm going to say private answer private int answer, and I'm going to do a second one called answer 2. Okay, so now I've established 2 instance variables. These are variables that are going to be able to be used throughout the class. Okay, and this error message I'm getting on them is just saying you have these variables and they're not being used. Okay, we're going to use them in a second. So now I'm going to create a method where I want to be able to use them. So I say public void, and I'm going to call it add, and it's a method, so I have to put the brackets in, curly braces, and what do I want this method to do? I want them to add 1. Okay, I want them to add 1 and 2 together. So I'm going to say answer equals 1 plus 2. That's all I want this method to do. All right, now I'm going to create another one. What happened to that? Okay, I'm going to create another one, and I'm going to call it public void multiply, and I'm going to have it do answer 2 equals 1 times 2. Okay, so now if I want to use these variables, or sorry, these methods, anytime I call add, it's going to add 1 and 2. Anytime I call multiply, it's going to multiply 1 and 2. But I don't have any output occurring anywhere. Okay, so now I want to add something that's going to allow me to call them so they can be outputted. So I call it public void print, and I say system.out.print, and I'm going to say 1 plus 2 equals space plus, I want answer in there because that's the answer, but that's the variable that has 1 plus 2 added together. Now I'm going to say plus a space plus a second string that said 1 times 2 equals space plus answer 2. Okay. Great question. That's a wonderful question. You're 100% accurate. Absolutely nothing will happen right now because there's no value assigned to 1 and 2. Okay, and I wanted to teach it this way to see if that jumped out at anybody in terms of what is this going to actually return. It's not going to return or print anything because there's no value in these variables yet. Okay, and that's what brings us to a modifier method. Okay, a modifier method is going to change the properties of some objects. Okay, so our instance variables up top don't have a value. So we create this modifier method. All right, so I'm going to go back in there and I'm going to do that from the beginning. And I'm going to say public void set nums. Okay, and inside my public void set nums, this is where I'm going to have parameters. Because anytime I use these variables, anytime I use these methods, they're going to be expecting some type of data coming in. So I'm going to say int n1 and int n2. Okay, those are the variables that I'm expecting inside that method. Okay, so now what happens in here? Well, in here, 1 is equal to n1, and 2 is equal to n2. Okay, so now anything I use this, anytime I call this method is going to expect me to be assigning a value to my instance variables. All right, so now if I go to my runner and I have to create a new object. So I say instance test equals new instance. All right, so now I have an object, and now I want to call that object, but now I have to call that object in order. I can't call add. Okay, so add is one of my options, multiply is one of my options, and print is one of my options. I can't call any of those before I actually assign a value to those instance variables. Okay, so the first one that I want to call is set nums. I call set nums and I say I'm going to use 5, and I'm going to use 5. That's actually new. I don't remember that doing that before. When I called it, it even gave me the names of those variables as I passed them. Okay, and remember it was n1 and n2, and you can see here I've called set nums, and it actually told me, hey, you're calling set nums. You have to give two parameters for that method. Okay, so that's relatively new. It never used to do that. Okay, so now I've called set nums, and the whole purpose of set nums is to establish a value for 1 and 2. Okay, so I've done that. Now I'm going to call add. I'm going to call multiply. And I'm going to call print. Okay, so those of you who are on it and they've got it and you understand it, it's no issues. Please bear with me because I want to go through and make sure we understand the process here. Okay, the first thing I did is I set up a way to assign value to my instance variables. The second thing I did is I carried out an adding operation. Then I carried out a multiplication operation, and then I carried out a print output option that brings everything that occurred in these other methods together and displays it for the user. Okay, I created these things first. Now I'm going to use those methods that I just created. So I create an object that has the same behavior, the same characteristics of the class it's created from. So here's my object. My object is called test. So now I'm going to use my object and I'm going to say test set nums, send in these options. Test add, I don't need to put any in because I've already done that in the set nums method. The set nums method automatically assigns a value to 1 and 2. Okay, the set nums method automatically assigns a value to 1 and 2. So now anytime these are used in any further methods, they're going to have that value. I carry it out in multiply, same thing, and then I print the whole thing out. So when I run my program, I get 1 plus 1 equals 10, and 1 times 2 equals 25. Okay, again, do what I say, not what I do. These are awful, awful names for variables because they're variables representing numbers named numbers. It's stupid. And I would give myself a horrible mark for my names for these variables. But do what I say, not what I do. In the end, my output is correct. It's exactly what I want. And I can change the variables. Now, I can change those ones, or I can make use of my object multiple times. Okay, and I can change it to something more difficult. or simpler. Okay, now when I run my program, it prints out each time I've used the object, okay, with all of those answers that are correct. Okay, those are instance variables. Those are modifier methods. Okay, encapsulation, private, all of that stuff all fits in with what I just demonstrated within that program. Okay, questions specifically? Okay, that's it for that lesson. It actually didn't take me as long as I thought it would take.